sa maghabong pagtatrabaho, pero wala kang pagkain sa bahay. Narito na ang sagot mga katropa, ang super manok lechon. Napapawi sa inyong gutom at siguradong mapapa-analyze ka dahil sa tender juicy na jumbo pa at siguradong malinis at bagong katay buhat sa farm. Kaya super masalasa at pangmasa pa. Ano pa hinihintay niyo mga katropa? Takbo na sa Super Manok Panday nyo siniluan at bumili na. Baka maabusan ka, katropa. Mga katropa, masarap at di kalidad na merienda ba para sa mga dabarkats ang gusto nyo? Kung gayon, narito ang saktong presyo at di kalidad na sarap. Ang Jugnos Master Pizza, ang pizza ng mga original na dabarkats. Ika na, a delicious snack on a powerful price. Matatagpuan sa Baler Street, 1550, Makati City. Ano pa hinihintay nyo mga katropa at mga dabarkats? Sumod na, punta na para makita nyo ang Jugnos Master Pizza.
Ngayon, just to continue, Mr. Clyde Teves, the person named in the search warrant, was not around during the implementation of the search.
Talakayin. Representative nasyonal. Kasama si ROCEL dito na sa New Millennial Online TV.
Barangay, pangunahing unit ng pamahalaan lokal kung saan dito pinag-uusapan ang bawat sigalot ng mga residente ng bawat barangay. Dito rin pinag-uusapan ng mga piling halal na opisyal na barangay ang mga proyekto para sa kanilang barangay. Kumustahin natin ang panunungkulan ni Kapitan dito sa Dama Barangay sa Millennial Online TV Worldwide, ang katropa ng bawat barangay.
Ating tinatapos ang ating pagpupulong. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo at tapos na po ang ating session. Enjoy na po tayo.
Hanap mo ba ay Unwind Ventures? Tara nang mamangha sa mga tanawin. Ano man ang iyong travel goals? Dadalhin namin kayo. Sa Unwind Ventures at saya. Dito lang sa Wow Biyahe. Kaya wow, di ba?
Abangan dito lang sa Millennial Online TV. Ikaw ba'y nag-iisa? Nalulungkot? Dahil iniwan at ipinagpalit? Niloko? Hindi minamahal? Kung ngayon, i-type sa iyong mga cellphone, Facebook o YouTube man ang Millennial Online TV. Dahil nasa Millennial Online TV na ang online haralista ng bagong milenyo, si Randall Villanos.
Sana'y di magmahil ang dati kong araw nang di pang bata sa piling ni nanay. Nais kong mauli ang awit ninang mahal. You are the one who makes me happy when everything else turns to gray. Walk on through the rain. Walk on through the rain. Though your dreams be tossed and walk on with hope in your heart.
At haharanahin kayo ni Randall ng iba't ibang awitin para maibsan ang inyong inip at kalungkutan kahit nasaan man kayo.
Hanggang sa tumanda. Come on. Matanda na, sana'y di tayo magbago.
At pwede rin kayo makiduet kay Randall tuwing Huwebes ng hapon. Ano pa hinihintay nyo mga kamilenyo? Tawag na!
Araw-araw ikaw ang gusto kong kasama.
Hoy, hoy, hoy! Magandang gabi, Pilipinas! Ang oras sa hudyat, alas 6:41 po ng gabi, Philippine Standard Time. At syempre po ngayon ay sa inyo na ang programang Tropa Thursday edition. At syempre po ako pa rin ninyo magiging kasama, mga Tropa Pips, ROCEL LOPEZ. At mamaya nako, may babatiin tayo ha. Nagbe-birthday ngayong araw na ito, July 20. July 20 po yung katropa natin na tawag dito. Ano siya empleyado, no? Ng barangay bayan-bayanan dyan sa Malabon. Naku, birthday niya ho ngayon. Si katropang Renz Visconde. Yan po, ito po ay anak ng aking batchmate na si Nancy, si Grace Nancy Visconde. At syempre, meron ding nagbe-birthday ngayon, syempre yung aking mudra, yung aking madir na nagbe-birthday din po ngayong araw na ito, araw ng Huwebes, ika-20 ng buwan ng Hulyo. At syempre po, sabay kami, syempre, mambihira lang. Alam naman si Madir lang ang babatiin ko. Happy birthday sa iyo, ma'am, mami. At sa akin, happy birthday din. Happy birthday sa atin. At kanina po ay kaming dalawa lang naman ang kumain. Kain lang, lunch, tanghalian. Hindi naman tayo ganun kalakas na rin kumain. Para lang makapagsalo, makapagkwentuhan. Siyempre, parehas kami may sakit na Pinag-uusapan namin, dapat alagaan namin yung aming mga sarili. Dahil mahirap magkasakit po, mga katropa. At yung mga nangako na magre-regalo sa birthday ko, may salamat po sa inyo. Yung mga nangako magre-regalo, maraming salamat po. Wala Talagang ganun Alam nga naman gusto mong pinangakuhan ka na, tutuparin pa. Matik na yun. At siyempre naku, magandang gabi rin sa ating mga katropa pips. Yung ating mga katropang mga barangay, mukhang mauudot na naman daw ang eleksyon. Gustong iurong ay sa 2025 na. Dahil ayon daw sa COMELEC, magiging malaki ang gastusin kapag daw itinuloy ang eleksyon. Wala natin kung anong mangyayari, magiging kayaraan nila sa kanilang pag-uusap kung itutuloy ba ang eleksyon o hindi na. Alam nyo, kapag ganyang eleksyon, siyempre, yung mga politiko natin, kabila na ang mga pag-iikot niyan. Siyempre, pagwapuhan, patikasan, lahat gagawin ng mga yan. Siyempre, para mailuklok sila sa darating na eleksyon. Barangay lang ho pinag-uusapan natin. Hindi pa ho yan barangay lang ho yan. Isipin nyo yun. Kaya, natin, tingnan natin. At mamaya, papatutunghayin natin yung ginawa hong Pandesal Forum dyan po sa Kamaning QC. Kung saan pinag-usapan dito yung mga election-related na topic. At may mga naging speaker, no? At nagkaroon ng mga kuro-kuro kung ano ang tungkol dyan sa eleksyon na yan. Anyway, mamaya ho yan lahat. Itutunghay natin, no, mga katropa. At yung mga bumabati ho ng happy birthday, kanina po, abay, wala hong humpay. Wala hong humpay yung aking nare-receive na mga chat, text, no, na bumabati po ng happy birthday sa akin, kay Mudra. Ayan, bumabati sila. Kaya maraming salamat po sa lahat ng bumati, no? At siyempre, doon sa mga nangako rin ng regalo, maraming salamat sa inyo. Di ba? Ganun lang ho yun, siyempre. Teka, merong balahibo doon sa aking gripo. Baka mamaya, masingot ko. Ha? At yun, basta sa lahat ho na nagbe-birthday ngayong araw na ito, July 20, abay, happy birthday po sa inyo. Ha? At sa atin lahat, sa atin, no? Dahil tayo magkakasabay po ng birthday. Kaya kaswerte. Kaswerte nung mga nakasabay kong mag-birthday, no? Dahil unang-una, nakasabay nyo birthday ko. Napakaswerte nyo talaga. Wala na kayong hanapin pa. Ha? At basta sa lahat din ng bumati, maraming salamat. At hindi kayo nagpunta Di sana na-blow out ko man lamang kayo, no? Kahit man lang na tinapay na pandikoko. O di sana na-blow out ko kayo. Wala, hindi kayo nagpuntahan di bali, okay lang. May mga susunod pa namang birthday na darating, no? Maraming salamat sa lahat ng bumati. Hindi ko na kayo isa-isahin, ha? Dahil napakarami nyo Isipin nyo, kanina ho umabot sa 5,000, ha? Yung bumati pa lang ho doon sa aking birthday, no? Kaya maraming salamat ho sa inyong lahat, no? Alam nyo, siyempre, pagka ganyang birthday, talagang pinaghahandaan ho yan, no? Minsan lang sa isang taon, Bueno, mga kaibigan, alas 6:47 na ng gabi, Philippine Standard Time. Buti pa'y, alamin muna natin, dito po sa DOST PagAsa, no? Ang lagay ng ating panahon, no? Para ano na ba ang lagay ng ating panahon, baka mamaya hindi nyo alam meron na palang bagyo, hindi natin alam, no? Malaman natin, no? Malaman natin. Teka muna, parang hindi ko pa yata nakita. Ayun, kaya pala hindi ko pa pala na kukuan, hindi ko pa pala nagagawa. Oo, pero ganun pa man, alamin natin, no? Alamin natin. Ayan, hindi ko makita. Ayan na, sabi ko. Ayun. Hindi ko makita. Dali lamang, Dali lamang po. At, nako. Ano ba naman to? Ayan. Hindi natin makita ngayon. Ayun. Nakita ko na. Ayun. Ayan. At alamin natin dito sa DOST PagAsa ang lagay po ng panahon. Narito mo, mga kaibigan.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Narito ang ating latest weather update kaugnay sa magiging lagay ng panahon ngayong araw at sa mga susunod pa at dito sa binabantayan natin na low pressure area. Ngayong umaga, huling namataan yung binabantayan natin na low pressure area sa layong 715 kilometers sa may silangan ng Surigao City, Surigao del Norte. Itong nasabing low pressure area sa susunod na 24 to 48 hours ay may tsansa pa rin na mabuo bilang isang bagyo at kapag naging bagyo ito ay tatawagin natin na si Tropical Depression Egay. At sa ngayong umaga, nakikita natin sa ating satellite image na karamihan ng mga kaulapan dito sa may bahagi ng Mindanao, sa may silangang bahagi ng Mindanao na nakapalibot dito sa low pressure area ay nag-dissipate na at nagkakaroon na ng unti-unting mas magandang sirkulasyon itong binabantayan natin na low pressure area. Kaya naman sa mga susunod na mga oras, unti-unting tataas yung tsansa nitong low pressure area na ito na maging isang bagyo, especially hanggang bukas. Samantalang regarding naman sa magiging track nitong low pressure area na ito o yung sama ng panahon natin binabantayan, Sa ngayon ay mataas pa rin yung uncertainty sa magiging track nitong low pressure area na ito. Ngunit sa buwan ng Hulyo or sa buwan ng July, inaasahan natin na yung mga bagyo or yung mga sama ng panahon na pumapasok sa ating Philippine Area of Responsibility, usually nagla-landfall po ito sa may northern or central Luzon, and may chance rin po na mag-recurve papunta sa may Japan area bago pa tumama sa ating kalupaan. Kaya naman sa ngayon, ito yung nakikita natin na possibilities regarding sa magiging track nitong low pressure area o yung sama ng panahon na ating babantayan. At para naman sa magiging lagay ng panahon dito sa Kalakhang Luzon ngayong araw, inaasahan natin na magiging maulap yung kalangitan na may kalat-kalat na mga pag-ulan, pagkidlat at pagkulog sa may bahagi ng Romblon, sa may Marinduque, gayon din sa may Masbate at sa may Sorsogon. Samantalang sa nalalabing bahagi ng Luzon, magiging bahagyang maulap hanggang sa maulap yung kalangitan at may mga tsansa pa rin ng mga pulo-pulo mga pag-ulan, pagkidlat at pagkulog, especially sa hapon at sa gabi dulot yan ng mga localized thunderstorms. Ang agwat ng temperatura sa Metro Manila at sa may Tuguegarao nasa 25 to 33 degrees Celsius. Dito naman sa may Lawag nasa 24 to 33 degrees Celsius. Baguio City 18 to 25. Sa may Tagaytay 22 to 31. Legazpi 24 to 30. Sa may Puerto Princesa 24 to 32 degrees Celsius. At sa may Kalayaan Islands naman ay 25 to 32 degrees Celsius. At para naman sa magiging lagay ng panahon sa Kalakhang, Visayas at Mindanao ngayong maghapon, inaasahan natin na sa buong Visayas, gayon din sa mga probinsya ng Zamboanga del Norte, Misamis Occidental, Misamis Oriental at sa may Agusan del Norte, Surigao del Norte at sa may Dinagat Islands, ay inaasahan natin na ngayong araw magiging maulap pa rin yung kalangitan na may kalat-kalat na mga pag-ulan, pagkidlat at pagkulog, dulot yan ng epekto ng low pressure area. Samantalang sa nalalabing bahagi ng Mindanao, magiging bahagi maulap hanggang sa maulap yung kalangitan at may mga tsansa lamang ng mga pulo-pulong mga pag-ulan, pagkidlat at pagkulog na mas papadalisin pa nitong trough nitong low pressure area. Ang agwat ng temperatura sa may Iloilo nasa 25 to 29 degrees Celsius, sa may Metro Cebu 24 to 29, Tacloban 25 to 28, sa may Cagayan de Oro 24 to 30, sa may Zamboanga City, 23 to 33 at sa may Davao City naman, 24 to 33 degrees Celsius. At para naman sa lagay ng ating karagatan, sa ngayon ay wala tayong nakataas na gale warning sa anumang baybayin ng ating bansa, malaya pa rin makakapalaot yung ating mga kababayang mga isda at may maliliit na sasakyang pandagat. Iba yung pag-iingat lamang sa mga papalaot dito sa may silang baybayin ng Visayas at ng Mindanao, kung saan maaaring makaranas ng katamtaman hanggang sa matataas ng mga pag-alon, dulot yan nitong low pressure area. At para naman sa magiging lagay ng panahon, simula bukas hanggang sa buong weekends, inaasahan natin na bukas magpapatuloy pa rin yung maulap na kalangitan na may kalat-kalat ng mga pag-ulan, pagkidlat at pagkulog dito sa may bahagi ng Visayas, kasama na dyan yung Metro Cebu. Samantalang sa mga susunod pang mga araw, ay inaasahan natin by Saturday, unti-unti magiging aliwalas yung panahon, bagamat maaari pong umiral itong hanging habagat sa may kanlurang bahagi naman ng Southern Luzon at sa may Western Visayas, particularly sa may bahagi ng Palawan at sa may Western Visayas area. Gayun din hanggang sa linggo, inaasahan natin na possible din po na umiral itong hanging habagat sa may kanlurang bahagi ng Luzon at yung low pressure area naman ang magpapaulan sa may bahagi ng Bicol Region at sa ilang bahagi ng Eastern Visayas. Ang agwat ng temperatura sa Metro Manila ay nasa 25 to 33 degrees Celsius, sa Baguio City ay 17 to 25, sa may Legazpi ang agwat ng temperatura ay nasa 24 to 31 degrees Celsius, sa may Metro Cebu ang agwat ng temperatura 25 to 31 degrees Celsius at sa may Metro Davao naman 25 to 33 degrees Celsius. At ang haring araw ay sisikat ngayong 5:36 ng umaga at lulubog naman mamayang 6:29 ng gabi. At para sa karagdagang updates, lalong-lalo na sa mga thunderstorm and rainfall advisories, ugaling bisitahin ng ating Twitter at Facebook page, DUST_PagAsa. At para sa karagdagang impormasyon, bisitahin ang ating website at bagong.pagasa.dust.gov.ph. At yan po muna ang latest mula dito sa PagAsa Weather Forecasting Center. Ito po si Patrick Del Mundo. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat.
Ayun, maraming salamat sa iyo, katropa. Yan, si katropang Patrick Del Mundo. Isa po sa ating katropang weather specialist po ng DOST PagAsa. Kaya tapos ngayon yung ating mga riders naman, kung naririnig yung pinag-uusapan nito sa DOTR, ay yung lalo na yung mga inaabutan ng ulan. Pwede naman doon sumilong sa mga flyover, sa mga ilalim, tulay, etc. Pero sandali lang. Pagkatapos nila magsuot ng kapote, ay kinakailangan umalis na. Dahil daw po nakaka-istorbo sa ibang motorista. Bagay nga, totoo naman ho yun. Dahil yung ibang mga motorista natin, mga riders, pag sumilong po sa ilalim ng mga flyover, abay nagsisiksikan doon. Nasasakop na nila yung mga dapat na right of way ng mga ating mga four wheels. Totoo naman ho yun. Kaso nga, wala namang magawa dahil siyempre nga naman mababasa ng ulan. Pero ngayon ay delikado na yung mga riders natin. Kinakailangan kapag kayo tumigil, sandali lamang, alis na. Hindi na po pwede ho yung katulad ng dating hanggang sa magpatila kayo doon na. Kaya ang problema naman, nakaka-istorbo nga naman daw. Okay, magandang gabi rin sa ating katropa, si Kuya Guillermo Pangatungan. Diyan pa ho sa Lapu-Lapu City, sa lalawigan ng Cebu. Magandang gabi sa iyo, Kuya Gimo. Si Kuya Guillermo Pangatungan. At syempre po, yung si Renz Visconde, hindi ko alam kung nakawatch Pero binati na kita rin sa happy birthday. Sabi ni Boss Ruth, sana daw makakatagpo ka na ng iyong mamahalin. Nabasa mo ba yung post ni Boss Ruth? Nabasa ko yun At marami ring salamat kay aking batchmate, na basta lahat ng bumati. Basta lahat ng bumati po, maraming salamat po sa inyo. Hindi ko na kayo isa-isa, ang dami ho kasi yung bumati. Hindi ko na ho isa-isa kung sino-sino yan. Basta ho, maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. At yun, nadagdagan na naman ang edad natin. Hindi ko na ho sasabihin kung ano edad ko. Tignan nyo na lang sa itsura. Kayo na ho bahalang magsabi kung ano edad ko. Hulaan nyo na lang. Ang makahula ho may premyo. So ayan, ay makakahula may premyo. Kailangan eksakto. Kailangan eksaktong edad ko ang mahulaan nyo, may premyo kayo. Okay, sa mga kaibigan, alas 6:58 na po ng gabi, Philippine Standard Time. At siguro, ikuha na natin, yung ginawang Pandesal Forum, kanina. Actually, mga ilang oras na to kanina, malaman natin kung ano na pinag-usapan doon. So, kung kayong kukurap, pwede kayong magbigay ng inyong opinion, kuro-kuro, at pwede natin iparating sa mga kinauukulan. Ito po yung may kaugnayan, itong eleksyon natin, narito po.
And this is a very special Pandesal Forum because the experts here on stage are the reasons also we have started Pandesal Forum. For the background, the people talking today are from CENPEC, Center for People Empowerment in Governance, a respected think tank in the Philippines, mostly composed of University of the Philippines professors and experts. For a short background there, in 2015, they spoke here 2 times to analyze the election surveys 2 times. And after their talk, a few weeks later, 2 famous candidates called up to speak here. Then Vice President Jojo Binay, who was #1 in the surveys, and soon after him, Senator Bongbong Marcos called also to speak here, and then all the other candidates. So we always support CENPEC and admire them. The speakers we had today, 4 speakers. What will happen now, I will introduce them quickly muna 4, and then each one I will introduce, and each one will give a presentation. After their presentation on different topics, we will have 2 or 3 questions from the media. And then after all the 4 speakers are finished, Then we go back to the question and answer for the rest of the session. I will just briefly introduce the floor, then we'll go to the first speaker. Of course, the first person at the middle is Dr. Temario Rivera. Dr. Temi Rivera is chairman of the Centec think tank. I will introduce him more completely when he will be talking. Then next would be Dr. Baractas Amante, economist, who will discuss the economy of the Philippines. What is the state of the Philippine presidency economically? Then, here in the middle also, one of the top foreign policy international relations experts in Southeast Asia, Professor Bobby Tuason. Later, I'll introduce in more detail. Next, Mr. Hector Barrios, who will discuss climate change under the Marcos presidency. Now, I will introduce Professor Temi Rivera. Ayos tayo. Ayos po. The first speaker, Dr. Temario C. Rivera, si Professor Temi Rivera, is foremost political science analyst and expert here in the Philippines and Southeast Asia. Dr. Temi Rivera was formerly chairman of the Department of Political Science at University of the Philippines, UP, Diliman. He had taught also comparative politics and international relations at the International Christian University of Tokyo, Japan. He has been editor-in-chief also of the Philippine Political Science Journal since 1993. He holds a doctorate in development studies from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Among his important published works include his major work entitled Landlords and Capitalists, Class, Family, and State in Philippine Manufacturing, published in 1994. He has received, which has received Outstanding Social Science Book Award from the Philippine National Academy of Science and Technology, and also from the Manila Critics Circle. He has a long biodata, but I just abbreviated everything. Let us welcome Dr. Temi Rivera, who is also chairman of the Centec think tank.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Wilson. It's good to be back at our Kamuning bake shop. I think the last time I was here was before the pandemic. Anyway, since there are four presenters, we were only given about 15 minutes for the presentation to maximize our Q&A forum. No? So I will focus my analysis on the political aspects of the first term, or the first year of President Marcos. No? And while officially this is a state of the presidency analysis, we also know that we cannot isolate the president from at least two very important factors, which would of course include the strength of state institutions and of course the response by the overall civil society. No? And so on the basis of this framework, let me now go into an analysis, at least of the first term of the president. Can we go to the next slide, please? Next slide. So yan yung framework natin. No? The presidency representing the political leadership, the the state of key state institutions, right? Including the key executive agencies, and also Congress and even the judiciary. And finally, the level of social participation or unity. How successful was President Marcos in providing the dynamics that would make all of these three key components function effectively? Okay, next slide. So, So, if we examine the first year of President Marcos, I think these are some of the key features that will emerge. You know? Obviously, President Marcos has really been fixated, strongly fixated, on rebranding the family image. No? And among the concrete examples of these are his attempt, not just attempt, but he has actually done this, to revive many of the projects associated with his father, including failed projects such as Masagana 99, Kadiwa, and now there is even a attempt to rebrand the old image. It is now referred to as Bagong Pilipinas. As I said, I cannot go into a lot of details, but you can ask for those during the Q&A. So yun ang unang matingkad, no? Rebranding of the family image. Secondly, because Marcos from the very start has always tried to negotiate a careful balance between, on the one hand, the legacy of his father, and on the other hand, the Duterte legacy. For the simple reason that he owes also a lot of his victory to the support of the Duterte family. No? He could not have won without the support of the Duterte partisans, especially the Mindanao votes. No? But that kind of conflict and tension has therefore resulted in a very conflicted response to the Duterte legacy. And the ultimate test of that, of course, is his inability or unwillingness to present a more decisive rejection or repudiation, at least of the worst abuses committed during the Duterte administration. I'm referring to the massive extrajudicial killings that took place under President Duterte. Third, at least again during his first year, we saw a lack of urgency in addressing many of the most urgent issues, especially in light of the pandemic. Alam na natin yung nangyari. No? It took him almost a year before he can appoint a full-time secretary to the very critical Department of Health, and also with the Department of National Defense. This took place only after a little over a year. And up to now, more than a year, another very critical sector, agriculture, still lacks a full-time secretary. No? So why is this the case? These are the most urgent concerns that any president should address, especially in light of the past pandemic. Together with those, of course, we would have expected a more decisive response to equally important issues like, of course, the inflation and employment, among others. Fourth, another characteristic of the regime of the Marcos presidency is the appointment of new and old cronies. I call them recycled cronies. You know? But also a much stronger dynastic presence, especially in Congress. Now, in principle, there's nothing wrong, of course, in appointing technocrats. No? What Marcos Jr. did was really to take a page literally out of his father's approach to governance by appointing many of the most experienced technocrats, no? Including the likes of Jokno, Palisatan, and the others associated with other presidents, particularly the presidency of GMA. You know? Now, I think, again, we cannot go into a lot of details, but I think the technocrats failed their most critical test during the first year of the presidency. And this is by fully supporting and endorsing the Maharlika Investment Fund. This is the first major test that I think they have failed, because we all know from all independent concerned sectors, those who are not partisan, they have all agreed that there is no sound economic or even political basis for creating a Maharlika Investment Fund, especially when we are in a situation where we have no surplus funds to begin with, where we do not have a clear track record of administering such a huge fund, because this will be managed, whether we like it or not, by presidential appointees. The record of Bongbong Marcos himself does not provide any confidence about their ability to address corruption issues. Well, no less than the president himself has been linked with all kinds of corruption cases in the past. Dynastic presence, we already know. No? The most stark illustration of that is Congress, especially the lower house, where no less than the first cousin, Speaker Romualdez, and his son, Representative Sandro Fernandez, are really the real leaders in the lower house right now. And the Senate is also dominated by close dynastic allies of the president. So, hindi ko nababanggitin yung mga pangalan, alam nyo na yan. No? Very poor record yung Maharlika Fund na kalakay na natin. Briefly also, another dramatic illustration of the misallocation of misuse of scarce resources is, of course, the deployment of unaccountable intelligence funds, notably to the Department of Education, which in the first place has no business being provided with intelligence funds. I think this is the first time in the history of the Department of Education that they have been provided millions of unaccountable intelligence funds. And finally, the Marcos administration is now also facing early signs of disunity in the coalition. Marked, of course, by the incident whereby former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo was demoted, no? And we all know that Gloria Macapagal Arroyo is a big political player in her own right. And the surprising thing is this unity has occurred in the very first year of the administration, I think, which does not bode well, no, for the succeeding years in terms of governance issues. Okay. Now, let's move on to another critical aspect of governance, which is the state of our institutions. Are they strong? Are they weak? Because even if you have a very well-prepared president, without the support of critical institutions, the president can do little, cannot function very well. And so these are some of the concerns that I would have thought the president would have devoted a little more time and urgency. Professionalizing our civilian and military bureaucracies. No, we all know what has happened with the PNP. The PNP, as we all know, has been hit by possibly the largest scam because, again, without going into the details, very briefly, we now know that numerous high-ranking PNP generals, including generals, were involved in this Shabu scam, where almost a ton of drugs, were secretly controlled by the same cabal. And who knows what would happen if this had not been discovered earlier. Of course, we know that an investigation has been conducted, but no decisive decision has been reached so far, especially about these leading generals. Now, that is corruption in its worst sense, because the PNP is the immediate link of the national government to all local government units, to all local communities. If that institution is broken, you can imagine how governance will proceed. Our civilian bureaucracy has long faced a severe problem of corruption and absorptive capacity. And we all know the problem. I cannot think of any decisive measure that have been pursued to address these problems of corruption. Low absorptive capacity, another major problem of our civilian bureaucracies. It is simply irrational. Binibigyan ka ng napakalaking pondo, you end up not spending all of it, whereas they could have used it for very urgent social needs of the people. Of course, that also immediately links with the corruption problem, because if you have so much unspent funds, a lot of it has also ended, unfortunately, in corruption. And as we all know, because of all of these problems, we continue to do very badly in many of the metrics for development in the world, including the World Corruption Competitiveness Index, the Transparency International Corruption Index, among others. Finally, we also all know that the rallying slogan of the Marcos campaign was to promote unity, the unity call. So what was the rhetoric all about, and what is the reality? I think the best response to evaluating that is what has been done to address the most serious problem of disunity that we have, that we continue to face, also in light of the past administration. Ito, yung continuing state repression of basic civil and human rights. Again, I will not go into details for a lot of time, but we all know that is a continuing serious problem. And just yesterday, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, has come out with a major decision rejecting the government's appeal to suspend further investigations. Now, we can go into the details later. So, if Marcos had been more serious about it, I think he could have done something, at least signaling to do something about the NTF-LCA, the National Task Force to end the anti-communist project of the president, which has been systematically red-tagging many of the legal personalities identified with the opposition. Something has to be done. The NTF-LCA can be easily abolished by the president himself, because it's not a law. It was created by an executive order. The Anti-Terrorism Act has also been weaponized to legitimize all of this systematic state suppression of basic rights. And finally, another major signal, if the president was more serious about a unity project, is that at the very least, we would have seen a readiness, or at least an initial signal, to open up peace negotiations with the armed conflict in the country. So, marami pong salamat.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Dr. Temi Rivera, for a very frank and comprehensive overview of what is happening in the political aspect of the Philippine situation under President Bongbong Marcos. We have time for 2 questions before we move on. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Wilson. That's why I suppose I will suggest na after every presentation we can ask questions. So we will follow the meat of the presentation.
That's a very
Professor Rivera, sir. Based on your presentation, can you tell us your analysis, your brief analysis in layman's term? What is the true state of the nation under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in his first term?
English.
Can you summarize what is the true state of the nation now?
Well, summarize now. Microphone, please.
The state of the nation, at least during his first year, no? Ang ginamit ko yatang term is opportunistic flexibility. No? In contrast to a term that we normally would use to refer to a more transformative leadership, which is principled flexibility. Now, flexibility is a virtue for any kind of leadership because a good leader has to be flexible. You cannot be guided by a dogmatic approach to a set of complex problems. But it must still be anchored, on a principle that is biased in favor of the people themselves. Kaya nga may pagka-opportunistic dahil wala yung commitment na yun. That's why I called it opportunistic flexibility. So why is that the case? Well, I provided the details.
Okay, Professor, one more question. Regarding the Mahalaga Investment Fund, we know recently the President signed it into law. So, according to the administration, that's why the approval of the MIF, kasi yun yung tinitignan nila na way that so that we can recover from the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, how do you respond with Malacanang rationale?
My colleague, Dr. Amante, will go into further details. But very briefly, from a political angle, yung sovereign fund kasi, if we examine the actual empirical record in other countries na nagsucceed ito, first, they were using surplus funds. In our case, we are using precious resources drawn from Land Bank, from the Development Bank of the Philippines, dividends from the Bangko Sentral, at a time na kailangan natin itong mga country resources na ito. In other words, there are more urgent reasons na pwedeng magamit itong pondo na ito. Now, why will we risk it in an untested a project because it's already been approved, untested because many of our independent observers all agree that there is no sound basis for approving a Maharlika Investment Fund. Economically and politically, it is extremely difficult to defend the rationale behind the Maharlika Investment Fund.
Okay, Professor, one last point on my part regarding the performance of the Congress. According to you, very poor yung kanilang rating with regards to the priority measures or bills of the President. But the Speaker himself is bragging that 33 out of 42 priority measures that was agreed during the LEDA meeting was passed by the first regular session of the Congress.
Again, in our political system, you need the approval of both houses of Congress. So even assuming that the claim of Speaker Romualdez is true, the fact that they have not been approved by the other house means that it's not yet a formal law. Kasi nga, can you imagine how many days were spent and lost in discussing the Maharlika Investment Fund, no? Which to begin with was not part of the original priority bills of the President. Hindi kasama yung Maharlika Investment Fund sa mga original priority bills niya. But because of the sudden infatuation with that, it ate up a lot of time and resources. No? In fairness, I think the other bill that was approved by both houses and eventually by the President himself is yung condonation of the debt of our farmers who have been the beneficiaries of the Land Reform Act. But again, for lack of time, very briefly, it's a step in the right direction. But again, it remains, the crucial question there is, bakit nga nangyari yun? Bakit umabot sa point where our farmers for several decades now are unable to pay their debt, their amortization? And it goes back to a basic question, because we have not seriously attended to the key problems of the agricultural sector. We have failed to modernize the sector. We have failed to provide our farmers with the basic financial, production, and marketing instruments that they need, no, to become more productive. So yun ang more basic question.
So once again, excuse lang sa mga kasama ko sa media, I don't want to lose the momentum. So, Professor,
baka pwedeng
isa lang because I don't want to lose the momentum with the issue tackled by Professor Rivera. Sir, hindi kaya ang problema talaga of all the administration, the past and the future administration, nasa sistema natin? Kasi we have the bicameral system of the legislature, which is very laborious or mabagal masyado kasi from the House of Representatives, especially this national bill, meron siyang counterpart sa Senado. Hindi kaya ang dahilan talaga kaya hindi nagtatagumpay ang mga administrasyon natin since 1987 na na-approve natin ng Constitution doon sa sistema talaga, political system natin.
It could be part of the problem, no? We need to study that more carefully. Ang problema lang kasi doon, even assuming na mag-agree tayo dyan, the response or the solution is not easy because we need to amend, right, the entire Constitution. But there is another point of view which argues that the current system, we already know the problems, no? We already know the problems, and there is no reason why we cannot respond to the most urgent problems. And as I was saying, it would really require a very functional interplay of the presidency as the topmost political leader and how he or she is able to mobilize Congress for its support and at the same time get the support of majority of the people, no? So, parang ganito yan eh. We know that the current problem has many problems, but to shift to a completely different political system through a constitutional amendment might provoke more problems, unintended consequences of a new setup na hindi tayo familiar. Yun naman yung other side of it. Thank you.
Thank you. May two more questions here. Wala na. Patuloy na. Yes. Suggestion, magsalita mo na lang lahat before. Yes, para kasi suggestion. Oo. Magsalita mo na lahat before questions. Next, we'd like to invite about the Philippine economy naman ngayon. The topic is, what is the state of the Philippine economy after 1 year of the President Bongbong Marcos presidency. The next speaker is Professor Malactas Abante. He is a professor of industrial relations at the University of the Philippines in Diliman, Quezon City. More than 2 decades of research, education, work, consultancy in economics, human resources, industrial relations. He was also involved with labor union work as negotiator and officer of all UP Workers Union and many others. He was also master's degree in economics from University of Illinois and many others. He was also formerly dean of the University of the Philippines Labor and Industrial Relations and many others. Let us welcome economist Professor Dr. Malactas Amante for his analysis of the Philippine economy.
Gandang umaga po. Good morning. My assignment, economics. Mga numbering ko ito eh. These are numbers. I know it is just difficult. So, I will have to skip some of the slides with the graphs because it might tire you looking at these numbers, tables. But I'll just highlight. The title is Danger Signals. Dati, mahaba eh. Structural continuity, etc. At the end, danger. So, because sometimes we look at these numbers, yung sinabi ni President last year, so ito yung mga key numbers na binanggit niya. And nobody paid attention really. I don't know kung ma-highlight natin ito sa ating mga headlines. So the President, of course, it's always positive. I mean, you have to be President, you have to be positive, you have to be optimistic, you have to set the direction. And sometimes you listen to conflicting opinions of your experts or advisors. So we promised 6% or 7% growth. So anong ibig sabihin yan? So, nagawa na ba yan? Well, 1 year. So tingnan natin. Kasi 2028 na naman yung promise. I'm not sure you put siguro yung playing. Masyadong maliit yan. I'm looking at my own slides. For the benefit of everyone, parang meron akong 1 page sa mga key points. But I should stop talking in 8 or 10 minutes. So, nangako po si President ng 6% growth. So, ano ngayon? Sa first quarter, 6.4 naman. But you see, GDP yan. Ano ibig sabihin yan? Gross domestic product yan. Pero marami pa tayong indicators na bitingan. Kasi, nag-highlight ito. I-reduce yung poverty. Yung mga mahihirap natin kababayan. Reduce to half. Yan. Tingnan natin. Kasi, importante yung mga plano dyan. Tapos, numero na naman, no? Yung GDP natin, deficit. Kasi may budget tayo. Laging kapos yan eh. Yung budget natin, laging kapos. Pero, gaano ka kapos? At how much? So, ang sabi niya, 2% lang. Pero meron pa tayo hindi siyang sinabi niya, foreign debt. Pero tayong malaking problema sa debt ngayon, kailangan bigyan pansin. Ngayon, sinabi ni Professor Rivera, we have to also pay attention to this latest market fund. I know we will have lots of questions and comments about that. But what is important is to be vigilant, to watch what's happening there. Pero na yata may nire-ready kaso para ipapile na yata yung what. So, pero no-dismiss yung ng kaso eh. Premature daw eh. Okay. So anyway, 60%, less than 60%. So as of now, it's about 61%. Okay? At ang pangako ng per capita income, sa kasi ngayon, mga $3,000 tayo, ay gagawin 4,000 this year. Next year. And $6,000. So multiply by, and you know the magic, multiply by with the foreign exchange rate. Depende yan sa foreign exchange rate. Economics na naman yan. May hilo na naman tayo. Kasi iba-ibang bagay naman ang determine sa exchange rate. At hindi ko nakita rito sa, of course, inflation. Binanggit kanina, inflation. Mahalaga, presyo. So, yun ang pinagyan ko, ang focus na bigyan pansin. Kaya kung magbabasa po tayo, andun lahat yun sa Philippine Development Plan. It's on page 23, if you pay to know. Libre naman po, download nyo lang yun. Sa page 23, yung mga pangako na ito, every year yan, kung magkano nangyayari. Pati na po yung unemployment, na hindi yung binabanggit ng President. Pero to reduce unemployment to at least 5%, or not more than 5%. Ngayon yan, yung mga kanina. 5%. Kaya mapapansin nyo, there is a certain structure. No? There's a certain structure that you will see. Itong income distribution natin ay magpapahalaga. Income inequity. May ginagamit kami dyan na measure, yung Gini coefficient, pero more of that. No? Kasi isa measure, income inequity or equity. So, siyempre, mas mababa yung Gini coefficient na yan, mas maganda. Kasi tayo, ngayon, 40% o 41%. So, naglalaro dyan. Ano? So, yun po. At ang food inflation. So, ayan ang kailangang bantayan natin. So, food inflation kasi malaki bahagi ng bigas. Of course, common bakery, flour. Lalo pataas nga niyan. I don't know. Pero bibili pa rin ako ng Pandesal. Kahit nagaling sa Ukraine yan, pinito na ng Russia yan, ako, yun, watch for it. Tataas ang presyo ng pinapay. Aabot yan. Kasi mukhang yung gero. At meron dito na taga-Philstar, nakita kong headline, ha? Yung FBI natin, bumababa natin. So, I don't know. Medyo significant yung pagkababa, ha? At kanina, hinahighlight itong external debt. Sorry, ha? Could you go to that slide about danger signs ahead? Ayan. Yan, ang kailangan. Ito, headlines nyo naman ito, Kinuha ko naman ito sa inyo, kaya alam nyo ito. Ano? Hindi ko... ang importante dito yung mga nasa huli. Ang FBI, ano nangyayari sa atin? Sa utang natin. Kasi laging sinasabi ng professor ko, kasi ito sila Professor Jokno, at mga medalya. Boss ko natin ito sila President Professor Pascual, Secretary Pascual. Ngayon, ang kailangan pansin nyo, bakit nangyayari itong utang ito? Bakit bumabalik tayo sa panahon ni Papa Senior, no? Marcos Senior? Kung hindi natin babantayan ito, unfortunately, konti lang yata ito. Kung si Sir lang nagbabantay dito, or Sir, ewan kung sino sa inyo nagbabantay dito. But did you notice the last headline that you have? 61% na yan, ng GDP. Lahat ng ginagawa natin dito, pabayad utang. 61%? Do you imagine that? So hopefully, pababa yan. But you see, I could hear the president saying anything about this. That was one problem. The danger signal nila kayo dyan. Kaya, aside from the Mahardik tax, but we did the Mahardik on the foreign debt. Ayan, nagtatanong ka rin yan. Pero mahaba yan, isang araw na seminar yan. Nayaran ng $10,000 yung mga speakers yan sa pagkakanisa nila. Kaya sir, mamaya magtatanong ka one day seminar yan. Ano kaya yung score natin? Kikita nyo ito sa ating statistics. At may mga pula dyan. Hindi ko ito yung makikita nyo naman ito sa ating, i-click nyo yung statistics of the website ni Professor Dennis. Ito makikita nyo. This is the website. Professor, sorry, I have to speak in Taglish. I think summary, but I could have a separate session with you later on. I have one foreign guest here. So, may pula ko dyan, no? Makikita nyo yan, trade. Pero magaganda yung iba. Napansin pa kayo dyan sa GDP. Bakit GDP 6.4? At yung GNI, ano ba yung GNI? Yan ang national income. Hiwalay pa yan, ha? Pero mas mataas yan. Alam niyo ba kung bakit? Kasi that is equal to the gross national product. Kasi GDP, ang ginagawa lang dito. That is the one. The OFW income natin, wala yan sa GDP. Kasi nasa labas yun, Saudi, etc. Kaya idagdag mo yan, yung mga remittances na yan, kaya ganun talaga yan.
mo, now of course you're happy. But to me, I see a danger there. Delikado to. I mean, we're too dependent on that. For our GNP. Don't you see a danger there? Kaya we have been looking at this. This is not the 15th SOP. Kailan ma-highlight ito? Well, that's why I have to say something very loud and clear about this. Batayan natin ito. Please, mga kababayan. What is the difference? Of course, poverty. What are the clear measures that we are doing? And labor, employment. So ito naman, nakikita yung employment. Can you go to the next slide? 2 minutes lang. So I will just highlight yung mga kailangan. And of course, we'll have a separate session on the those of you who want to know more. Study economics, 1 semester, 2 semester course po ito eh. Ngayon, ang unemployment, pero may napapansin kayo dyan, underemployment. Malaki pa rin yun eh. Unemployment, maganda kung mababa. But I don't know, mga contractual jobs natin kasi yan eh. Kasi once we have Christmas season or agricultural season, we have contractual workers, contractual sales, contractual department store, tapos i-enter natin, pataas naman yung unemployment. Hahanap na naman sila ng trabaho. Yun ang nagiging underemployed. Kasi transition yan, di ba? O kaya, those who have work, kunwari may trabaho, but still looking for work. I don't think China has this number, but we do have this number of underemployment. And that's the danger because that is still a high number. You see? That's one danger signal that we have to watch. Okay? And, of course, everybody happy, or I don't know if you're happy, that your wages was increased by 50 pesos. So, Mr. Wilson has to increase his wages by 40 pesos. So, are you happy? Of course, Mr. Wilson, I don't know, I hope he's also happy, but the other regions, dito from Manila, how about the other regions in the meantime? And you see the gap. Go to the next slide, yung wages. Ito maganda mga numero. Of course, Manila is now 610. Pero tingnan mo sa ibang region, ibaba pa rin. So yun pa rin ang ating structural continuity na problema. Kailangan pansinin natin yan. Paano yan? I thought the law 30 years ago was to reduce these income gaps and disparities. So what do you do with that law? We continue with that law. So it's still the regional wage boards fixing it. Sila mga makapangyarihan din sa mga region. Sila magtataas ng yung sweldo sa mga at take down. So yun po ang kailangan bigyan natin ng pansin because that's getting worse because that's very important for our income distribution. Dapat natin. So siguro I'll stop here by just showing you the next graph. I still have more than 10 slides pero ito na muna because I know kailangan pag-aralan yan. Ito makikita niyo yung growth pattern. Ito COVID bumagsak. You see? But, very clear. Yan naman ang maganda sa mga Pilipino. Naka-recover tayo. 100% pa nga. Pero you see, the danger there is, it's flat now at medyo bumababa ngayon. Kaya saan papunta yun? And that is very important dito sa ating mga targets. No? Skip ko na itong iba kasi mga struktura ito. Ito, I think when you go to slide number 12, skip na natin sa slide number 12. Ito yung inflation na binabantayan natin. Saan pupunta itong inflation? Ang mahalaga po rito, yung dulo kung saan pupunta. Parang bumababa, no? 6.6. Pero you see, the line has been going up since 2022 last year. So, posible ba yan, nakababa yan? Kasi yung food inflation natin, yung importante, yung tinapa, yung bakery, yung mga onions, yung mga garlic queens, andyan pa rin. Sarap pala maging onion queen, at garlic queen. O yan, narinig yun, nakikita ko kayo sa hearing doon. Sa Senado, nagalitan sila ni Senator Vivian at Isinwal. Yung onion queens doon. Andyan pa rin pula. Wala pa rin nakukulang dyan. Andyan pa rin ako sa self-care sa delay. Papunta-punta sila, makikita mo kayo dyan. Yan sila nagka-transaction actually dati sa self-care. Napansin ko yun. tonelada yung narinig kong usapan sa kabila. Anyway, cartel is still there, the smugglers are still there, the oligopolies in the vegetables, rice, sugar, we still have to import. Bantayan natin yung sugar na yun, wala talaga. Yung rice niya. So, I stop here because I think it's important. Ang sabi ko dito, I think it was just my one-page summary. Sabi ko po rito, danger signals, poverty reduction. Kailang bantayan yan. Ano ba talaga yung target natin na GD coefficient? 40.7%. 2021. Siyempre dapat bumaba. Wala po akong narinig. Anong gagawin doon, ha? Pulang-pula po yung trade deficit natin. Anong gagawin natin dyan? Because there is still rising tension between the US and China. Our major trading partners are still the US and China. So I have other graphs there to show that. And the deficit is widening with respect to our friend from China. Kasi puro lang tayo bananas. We send you pineapples and bananas, but we buy you all sorts of things like lato-lato. I don't know if we buy lato-lato from you. But we have a deficit with you. So what? I have not heard anything clear about that. So yun po ang mga signals. And of course, you could just refer to my page of what's up. Importante po bantayan natin, lalo na po itong mahakita, itong foreign debt, at itong food inflation natin. Lalo po ang pinapamessage ko na dapat bantayan kasi sa state of the presidency, yung sabi namin ni Seb, magtatanong kayo magkano ang grado namin sa kanya, hindi naman siya estudyante. Kaya, pasado ba o bagsak, babi na lang po, Sir Rivera at Mr. Marius na lang magsasabi. Salamat po. Kung may questions, alam ko mahirap talaga magtanong tungkol sa economics. Kaya lang pag-aralan natin ito eh. Kaya nasa inyo po yan. Ano pa kayo, tuloy-tuloy na tayo sa foreign policy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malagtas Amante, for his interesting, thought-provoking presentation and his many questions to the President. We will discuss that later in the question and answer. We shall now proceed to the foreign policy aspect of the Marcos presidency. We have with us one of the top international relations, international politics analysts in Southeast Asia, Professor Bobby M. Tuason. He is author, co-editor, and editor and author of already 16 books, plus a new book coming this year entitled Spies, Plan Politics, and a New World Order. Watch out for the launching of this book here at Aboning Bakery Cafe, Pandesal Forum. Hopefully in a few months. Professor Bobby Tuason is Director for Policy Studies and in-house analyst of the CENPEG think tank, Center for People Empowerment in Governance, also lead convener of the AES Watch. He used to be also former chairman of the Political Science Department of the University of the Philippines, Manila, where he was an award-winning professor multiple times. And also, he, aside from being a top educator and analyst of geopolitics, Professor Bobby Tuason is also an investigative journalist, opinion columnist, editor, publisher of various publications. He has written hundreds of analysis and scholarly papers, investigative reports, and commentaries in past decades. He is resource speaker, lecturer, and also analyst in various national and international forums and conferences, including all over Asia, US, Europe, etc. Let us welcome Professor Bobby Tuason.
Thank you very much, Wilson, for your excessively generous introduction. I will focus on Marcos's foreign policy during his first year. Basically, my analysis is that he devoted his time of his foreign policy mainly on a pivot, not pivot, a pivot to the US. So it's not an independent foreign policy. I'm trying to restate what he said in his inauguration in July last year, and also repeated in his persona, also in July, that he was going to push for an independent foreign policy. So I will dispute that, but let me go first to the point that overall, Marcos's foreign policy is nothing new. It's nothing new. It is basically a continuity of Philippine foreign policy seen over the past 70 years. Those of you who are familiar with the Philippine foreign policy over the past 70 years, you can easily recall the fact that the excessive focus on Philippine-US relations, especially not only diplomatic but also defense relations, has been indicated by, well, from 1947 to the present. We can go through, for instance, 1947, there was this military bases agreement, or MBA, and then this was followed by what is now called the Mother Treaty of the Defense Alliance with two countries, which is called the 1951 Mutual Defense Pact, or MDP. This will soon be later on be followed by the Visiting Forces Agreement between the two countries in 1999, during the time of the Estrada administration, which allowed the U.S. forces to enter any point of the Philippine territory on the pretext, well, it was justified as the conduct of joint war exercises between the two countries. Then there will be more. For example, 2014 EDCA, or Expanded Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement between the two countries. I will deal with this in more detail later on. So basically, the configuration of Philippine foreign policy has been and will always be tied to this dependency ties of the Philippines on the United States, or to the United States. Now let me go back very quickly. What happened during the Turkish time, 2017 to 2022. Duterte, I will not call it, I will correct it today as not a pivot to China, but a policy of appeasement with China for economic exigencies. Even if Duterte went to Beijing, I think 3 times, and met President Xi Jinping, and he was able to sign with the Chinese government several economic cooperation agreements, including loans and infrastructure projects. What is quite misunderstood is the fact that he, in fact, enhanced defense or enhanced alignment with the US, and that he, in fact, increased joint war exercises during his term. Now, this is the letter that is now being pursued further by Marcos Jr. from July 2022 to the present. Through the following, I'll just read through. Marcos Jr. reaffirmed strong defense commitment with Biden when he saw Biden at the White House in September 2022, and again, I think April or May this year. The U.S., on the other hand, reaffirmed the 1951 NDP with respect to the South China Sea maritime disputes. The U.S. under Biden raised the level of what the U.S. calls how to enforce the MDP by clearly indicating that the U.S. will defend the Philippines in case of any armed conflict with China over the maritime issues in the SES or WTS. Number two, it was during the last year, the first year of Marcos Jr., where the EDCA sites were increased in number from 5 to 9. So under Bongbong Marcos, it went up to 4 EDCA locations, including 3 that are geographically proximate to Taiwan, to the Taiwan Straits, where the U.S. has been conducting maritime and naval operations, and even indicated to Taiwan that the day the U.S. denies this, that it will be behind, the U.S. will be behind an independent Taiwan. Then also during the first year, the bilateral defense guidelines was signed or was adopted that called for alliance coordination and interoperability. Now, under Marcos Jr., it became clear that the alliance between the U.S. and the Philippines was to be expanded in terms of joint exercises and also military assistance. I call this the multilateral alliances or hub and spoke, where the U.S.-Philippine relations was expanded to include Japan, Australia. And in fact, early this year, the U.S. and the Philippines undertook their first trilateral coastal exercise together with a third country, Australia. So it is now expanded. Beyond the U.S., Japan, Australia, and I think even South Korea have committed themselves to extend assistance to the Philippines in any tension or armed conflict that will develop in the South China Sea. In addition, Australia has committed the provision of drones, training, and other technologies for Japan for the first time. Redefined or expanded the meaning of its ODA or overseas development assistance to include military aid. So this is the first time which the ODA of Japan is now going into extending military aid in the case of the Philippines. Lastly, the U.S. has over $1 billion in terms of arms sales with the Philippines and committed an additional $100 million for foreign military financing last October. To begin with, this is nothing new. This arms sales and foreign military financing to the Philippines has been happening over the past 7 years and even decades. But it has become more glaring today, especially because Marcos Jr. has visibly and strongly committed the Philippine government's defense alliance with the U.S. That was understood by the U.S., and I think this is very important, that was understood by the U.S. as a defense alliance against China. Now, what is this U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy? The role of the Philippines has now expanded under Bongbong Marcos beyond Southeast Asia. Beyond Southeast Asia, and has now expanded to include the scope of the whole Indo-Pacific. So the objective of the U.S., together with its Western and Japanese allies, is to bolster the Philippine defense to become, for the Philippines to become a strong, equal partner in the IPS. Today, under Marcos Jr., the Philippines is the new force in the USS hub and spoke strategy in the IPS against China. Whoever disputes this will fail because the statements and policy pronouncements coming from Washington talk about this new spectrum of defense relations between the Philippines and the US. Now, let me go quickly about this economic relations with China. Well, of course, there is a robust, continuing economic cooperation system between the Philippines and China, which was elevated by Duterte in 2017 to a comprehensive partnership. Unlike Duterte, however, the so-called accomplishment of Marcos Jr. in dealing with China is paltry. It's paltry. Because if the Marcos government talks about the 14 deals that have been extracted so far from Beijing, these are mainly inconsequential or insignificant, except in agriculture, one, in some MOUs. Remember, this is a memorandum of understanding and it's not mandatory. To make it mandatory, you should enter into formal contracts. And then a reaffirmation of the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, which is nothing new. And then what is still, well, a reiteration is this maritime deal about maritime security, which refers to a deal for a communication mechanism on maritime issues between the Philippines DFA and China's MOFA, or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is essentially a reiteration of what they agreed upon in 2017 or 6 years ago. So overall, my contention is that Marcos's foreign policy is soldered or cemented on a strong but traditional national security policy. What do I mean by national security policy or traditional national security policy? It is a policy that is anchored in a strong traditional national security, which refers to the ability of a government to shield or protect its citizens from military attacks. So basically, fundamentally speaking, military, which goes against the new and current definition all over the world, or at least in most parts of the world, about national security. But national security also includes non-military aspects such as economic security, environmental security, food security, energy security, cyber security, and protection from crime and terrorism. So overall, the current and the new scope and description of national security policy goes against the old and somewhat obsolete definition of national security, which is the major component of the Philippines foreign policy, not only during the first year of Bongbong Marcos, but also in previous administrations. So I think this is archaic, meaning to say, somehow you will sense here that the making of Philippine foreign policy, including under Marcos Jr., is inflexible. It is inflexible. It is incapable of adjusting to new realities, not only in the region, but also throughout the world. And to the new definition of national security, which goes beyond its military definition, but also economic, food, energy, and so on and so forth. So overall, the current and the new scope and description of national security policy goes against the old and somewhat obsolete definition of national security, which is the major component of the Philippines foreign policy, not only during the first year of Bongbong Marcos, but also in previous administrations. So I think this is archaic, meaning to say, somehow you will sense here that the making of Philippine foreign policy, including under Marcos Jr., is inflexible. It is incapable of adjusting to new realities, not only in the region, but also throughout the world. And to the new definition of national security, which goes beyond its military definition, but also economic, food, energy, and so on and so forth. So in the final analysis, I submit that Marcos's foreign policy is incoherent and ambiguous on China. It takes priority, on the other hand, on long-term continuity and dependence with the U.S. I wonder whether this could be one of the reasons why the former President Duterte went to Beijing to meet President Xi Jinping 2 days ago to review relations. It is also ill-informed, intractable, and not grounded on realities with regard to tectonic shifts in the regional and world power equation, like the rise of new powers and multipolar polarism relative to the decline of the American hegemonic power. I wonder how many officials of the BFA are aware of this, let alone whether Marcos Jr. himself is aware about this, these tectonic shifts. Mahirap na i-manage yung isang Philippine foreign policy na hindi siya umaakma sa mga pagbabago na nangyayari sa buong mundo. So, in conclusion, it is dangerous and risky. You can quote me on that. An equivocal defense alliance with the US is dragging the Philippines to an unwanted war with a foreign power. So tomorrow we might be dragged into a war which is unwanted, but we're not prepared for that. Sabi mismo ni Duterte, why go to war with China when you will be decimated in just 24 hours? Don't go to war. Adapt and continue to adapt bilateral dialogues and mechanisms. May existing naman na bilateral dialogue. So this is something that most Filipinos, I think, should be aware of, that there's no need for American intervention. We can solve our own problems with other countries like with China without being dictated by the Americans. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Professor Bobby Tuason, for another very thought-provoking, incisive analysis of Philippine foreign policy under President Bongbong Marcos 1 year and what's happening with Asia and the world now. Please prepare your questions later after all the presentations, especially for the speakers. Next, last but not least, before we go to the question and answer, we have another speaker here. He is a former bank vice president, management systems consultant, Mr. Hector A. Barrios of CENTEC. His fields of specialization include electoral system studies, usually finance and banking. But today, he is here to speak about climate change policies of President Bongbong Marcos during his first year as president. Let us welcome Mr. Hector A. Barrios. Thank you.
Magandang umaga po. Slide 1, please. My topic is the Philippine Climate Change Program in the current administration. This title, the way it is worded, is actually significant, so I'd like to explain it so that we are starting on the right foot. By wording it this way, I am avoiding any discussions of the controversies about the phenomenon of climate change itself. We know it is still in the woods as far as controversy is concerned, and the response to climate change is also controversial worldwide. We are avoiding that by focusing only on the Philippine problem. The other thing we are avoiding is having to conflate climate change with environmental degradation. The two are separate, although there are overlaps. But in this talk, I am focusing purely on climate change. Next, please. The one before that, please. Okay. First, we have an overview. Number one, climate change problem. Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns mainly caused by human activities, especially the burning of fossil fuels. We are following here the UN definition of climate change. Next slide, please. The world response to the climate change problem. World government leaders have come together for an organized response. This is shown in the illustration entitled An Ecosystem of Action. Next, please. Here is the ecosystem of action. It shows the different levels of governance that to effectively address the climate crisis. We'll see three entities there: the international organizations, the states, and local authorities. And they have different roles and functions within that ecosystem of action. The international, well, I did not explain because it is quite visible, but they have distinctive responsibilities. And this, among the states here is the Philippines. Next slide, please. The Philippines is a participant in the ecosystem of action. As such, it has established the following: Climate Change Act, Republic Act 9729, and the National Climate Change Action Plan, NCCP. In doing this, the Philippines is therefore acting in consonance with the world organizations. Next, please. Here we are now finished with the overview, and now we are focusing on the Philippine program. The Philippine program consists of the NWCP and the Republic Climate Change Act. The main provisions of the Climate Change Act are to build climate resilient infrastructure programs, to transition to more renewable energy, to look towards the Asian Development Bank for support in climate-related projects. Next slide, please. For its part, the NWCP Action Plan has programs and projects focused on the following: food security, water sufficiency, ecosystem and environmental stability, human security, climate-smart industries, sustainable energy, knowledge and capacity development. One thing you'll notice about this list is that these are the normal functions of government. With or without climate change, we'd be concerned with food security, water sufficiency, ecosystem and environmental stability, human security, and sustainable energy. You'll notice immediately the big overlap of the concerns of the NWCP with the normal concerns of government. Next slide, please. The goals of the climate change program of the Philippines. These are consonant with the way the world organizations have divided the problem of adaptation and mitigation. Our adaptation goal is to reduce risk and vulnerability to climate change, strengthen resilience, enhance well-being, and the capacity to anticipate and respond successfully to change. Our mitigation goal is reduction and avoidance of greenhouse gas emissions, to the tune of 75% for the period 2020 to 2030. This is a formal pledge, our pledge to the United Nations in May 2021. Next slide. So knowing now the goals and the content of the work involved in the project, let's go now to the cost. Here in this table, we are really, the figure that we're looking at really is the bottom one, the 2023 budget for climate change, 453.1 billion. This represents 48% over last year, an increase of 40%. And as a share in the national budget, it takes 8.6% of the budget. Now, what's the other figures doing there? I provided this to provide context to the 2023 figures. We'll see that in 2021, a budget of 181 billion, government agencies involved were 34. In 2022, by which the budget grew by 36%, the government agencies involved were already 80. Now, I have no figure for 2023, but there is a great possibility that in view of the massive increase in the budget itself, it is quite probable that government involvement, government agencies involved in the project have also increased substantially. This also shows that the action plan is very much embedded in the government bureaucracy. Okay, next slide. Budget utilization. How is the 453.1 billion project to be used? Well, the way it was used in 2022 can give us some idea. That year, 230 billion was allocated for adaptation and 50 for mitigation. So about 5/6 for adaptation and 1/6 for mitigation. And who were involved here? The allocations were given to the Department of Public Works and Highways. So the significant figure here actually is the 67% percentage share. Next to it was the Department of Transportation, 14%. Then the Department of Agriculture, 11%, and others, the rest 8%. Next slide, please. Now, how conscionable or how ordinate is the budget of 453? We can say that we're not exactly a very poor country. We're rather poor, but not very poor, but we are far from being rich. Is 453 an ordinate amount? So to get a handle on that, I provided some comparative figures, which is the budget of the top 5 departments in 2023. Education, 852. Public Works and Highways, 718 billions. Health, 296. Interior and Local Government, 253. Defense, 240. How much was our climate change figure again? 453. So it would rank the third among our departmental budgets. Do you see a department of climate change? There is none. How is that? How can we spend the 453? It is embedded in the workings of these departments. So the manner of implementation, in other words, the manner of implementation of the climate change program and budget is by embedding the action plan in the existing departments and agencies of the government. Next slide, please. Now that we have seen the goals, the cost, the way it is implemented, let's now finally go to what has been accomplished so far. On the adaptation goal, no progress report. Excuse the typographical lapse. Should mean no progress report. No progress report showing by how much our risk and vulnerability has been reduced, or by how much our resilience, well-being, and capacity to anticipate and respond to change has been enhanced by spending so much, doing so much. There are so many reports about what they're doing, but if we ask what has been accomplished, I couldn't find anything. Parenthetically, I would like to comment that that's not really strange, because I don't think this is adaptation is measurable. The effectiveness of the measures taken can only be determined over time, not through actual experiences. In other words, we are taking these measures today in the hope that they will be effective when the time comes. We'll only know when they are effective when the big typhoon is hit. Otherwise, we are just guessing or hoping. Next slide, please. As regards the accomplishment on the mitigation goal, likewise, there is no performance report on how much percentage of greenhouse gas emissions has been reduced so far. You'll notice that this is a quantifiable objective. Unlike the adaptation goal, this goal is quantitative and measurable. Therefore, there should be a quantitative progress report, and yet we have none so far. So far, this has been the first part of my presentation, which is really an abbreviated but fairly complete picture of the Philippine climate change program. Now I will proceed to the last part, which is our comments and evaluation. Next slide. Next slide. Comments number 1. The reduction of greenhouse gas emissions should be reported. It is our commitment to the UN and should be quantifiable. If it has not done so yet, the government should allot part of its budget for measuring the percentage of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. The results will tell us if we are doing the right thing and making progress, or just using up resources for nothing. Number 2, as regards the adaptation goal, the government is awash with plans, projects, activities, all being undertaken by a large number of government entities. Hopefully, they don't run over each other. This multitude of activities is hard to oversee or audit. Misappropriation is very hard to control. In short, in sum, there is a need to devise the adaptation program in a more systematic way. Next slide, please. The last slide. Second to the last slide. The second, indeed, there is a more systematic way. An adaptation plan that is based on our key climate variables as identified or determined by our scientists. Our key climate variables are rainfall, prevailing winds, which bring typhoons seasonally, and the sea level. They are the key variables that will be affected by climate change. They are measurable. Number 4, the government should get a forecast of these variables from our scientists. I think a 20-year forecast would be good enough to be used as basis for an adaptation plan. Last slide. For example, if our scientists think that our sea level will rise by so many inches, say 3, 4, 5 inches, then fishing villages as well as coastal towns can be moved up several meters up the shore or if monsoon rains will increase by so many inches per year, then the drainage system of the many flood-prone towns, mostly in the western side of our country, which is the pathway of monsoon, this can be shored up and improved with infrastructure. Or if our typhoon season now will have on the average 19 typhoons instead of just 17, which is our historical average, then disaster relief and flood mitigation can be increased accordingly. Finally, I'd like to share, in short, adaptation can be a measured response based on specific indicators identified by our scientists. Thereby, action plans will then be specific. Duties and responsibilities will be specific. And whatever the cost is, it would be well justified. Thank you for hearing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hector Barrios, for your climate change overview of the Marcos presidency. It's not a very popular topic, but very important for our future as a country and as Asia. Now we proceed to the most interesting part, the question and answer part. Before the media would ask questions, I have received 5 questions here. Having one question, 5 journalists via Facebook and Zoom and text. How would you rate President Bongbong Marcos as a leader on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5? And please explain why. They are asking the experts of CENTEC, how do you rate or assess him based on like 1 to 10? Based on politics, good governance, economics, foreign policy, including climate change. Dr. Temi Rivera to speak, chairman of CENTEC.
Thank you. Well, actually, we consulted with each other earlier, and on a scale of 1 to 10, we unanimously agreed that we will award President Marcos during his first year a rating of 5, parang pasang-awa. Okay. Mainly because we realized that there was a failure on his part to address our most urgent issues. So, yun ang overall context.
Thank you very much for that sobering rating. It's a good challenge for our government to do better. Ms. Torres, please introduce yourself to the panelists. Yes, thank you.
No problem. Good morning po, Tristan from CNN Philippines. So, siguro more on the foreign policy lang, sir, na kasi may sabi po si Chairman Temi kanina about balancing the Duterte legacy and at the same time as father. But ito po, very recently nakita rin natin yung meeting ni President Duterte with Chinese President Xi Jinping and then the Marcos administration more focusing din sa strength sa US side, sir. So, sa foreign policy, ano po ang direction ba talaga na dapat tignan? Kasi, or ano bang role ang pwedeng gawin ni President Duterte kung meron pa rin po siyang influence dito sa Marcos administration in balancing this ties with China and the US?
That's Mr. Tristan Adalo of CNN.
My take on that is that first, I don't think the former president would go to Beijing without being requested from within the Philippines. I can mention 1 or 2 names, but I'd rather that we put that aside. Former President Duterte went to Beijing just after 1 year of the term, the first year of the term of Marcos Jr. So I think that is something that we should look into. I can read, my political reading here is that the government of President Xi Jinping is strongly concerned. And I think this was earlier initiated by the former Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who is now the State Chancellor of China. And that obliquely said that the tightening of defense relations between the Philippines and the U.S. under Marcos Jr. is something that can be defined as projecting strong concern and major challenges to the Chinese government at a time when China is facing the U.S. over the Taiwan Strait, in the Taiwan Straits, which under the One China principle, China is a province of China. That's indisputable. And also at the time when the naval and maritime operations of both China and the U.S. are increasing in the South China Sea, or also otherwise also called West Philippine Sea. So my reading regarding the visit of Duterte, because normally a current leader of China does not meet a former president or prime minister of another country. I can't see any precedent on that. So this is something that is unusual and real. Because of its the importance that I get from that event. Therefore, I would look at the Duterte's visit as very important. One, number two, as some kind of an appeasement or repairing ties between China and the Philippines as a result of this increasing deepening defense alliance between the U.S., or rather between the Philippines and the U.S., which the U.S. itself, from the words of the U.S. President, State Secretary, and the Defense Secretary, are essentially meant to deter what they call the existential threat of China. We are not privy, of course, to what was discussed between the two leaders, except to say, and this was publicized by Xinhua, the Chinese news agency, quoting Xi Jinping as saying that he hopes Duterte will help promote and move the Philippine-China relations a step further amid some differences and tensions emanating from Marcos Jr.'s move toward the U.S.
I think it's a very clear signal to the Bongbong administration that China is concerned, deeply concerned, about the policy of Bongbong to completely embrace a militarily anchored alliance with the U.S. And the visit of President Duterte, while it was not official, was a very convenient way to signal to the Philippines and to Bongbong Marcos that China is concerned. And even while Duterte is no longer president with much less power and influence, still, we cannot also deny the fact that he can, through various ways, at the very least, introduce some rethinking, if that is possible, no? In the same way that initially GMA was seen as signaling a more balanced policy between the US and China, and even Ivy Marcos, by the way. No? So, in that sense, it's not a politically innocent visit. It is a form of persuasive diplomacy. You know? Thank you.
I guess I'll quickly that my intuition, you may disagree with that, including that Duterte was requested by GMA to meet Xi Jinping. And I don't believe that Marcos Jr. was not aware. He was aware of this meeting.
Just a quick follow-up on this question. Should President Duterte be given an official role in terms of facilitating Philippine relations, Philippine-China relations? Pwede ba siyang maging political advisor, special advisor on China affairs? Because, sabi nga po, di ba, maganda yung relation niya with China. So, how can the Marcos administration utilize or maximize that relations po? Pwede ba ba bigyan?
The reality of presidential politics, that kind of scenario is very unlikely, I think. If you were the current president, under our political system and the current practice, it's really the incumbent president that defines and dictates the major contours of foreign policy. By allowing somebody like Duterte or even GMA earlier to play a significant role will undermine that role. And it will be natural for any president not to do that, although that does not prevent, of course, other players from using that as an informal channel. No? Informal.
I would also read that President Xi Jinping was expecting it, this meeting with the former Philippine president.
Thank you for interesting question and answers. Very interesting. May tanong dito sa con. Dito. Yes, i-share. Please kindly introduce yourself again.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Yes.
Good morning po, Sharia Torres from PSCN. Sir, first, alam ko you mentioned all the noteworthy programs of the Marcos Jr. administration, and if I may call it, the liabilities, the shortcomings. But this time, may I ask if there are some positive points that you've been seeing that from the president's programs this early, just 1 year after the SORA? After the first SORA.
Quick response, because my colleagues can also respond to that. Well, in fairness, in terms of formal laws passed, the condonation of the huge debt of our farmer beneficiaries under the Land Reform Act, is a step in the right direction, right? But as I noted earlier, it begs a more fundamental question. Why is it na umabot sa punto na yun, no? And as I said earlier, it goes back to a more fundamental concern which past administrations have failed to address. And unfortunately, wala ding clear signal from Bongbong Marcos na ngayon. And this has to do with the urgent reforms and modernization that we need to do with the agricultural sector, no? Papasok dyan hindi lang yung technical, financial support, but another reform intervention is yung cooperatives movement. Kasi ang problema ng mga small scale land by itself and this is proven by all kinds of research, especially in rice agriculture, hindi talaga viable, no? So one response to that is to help organize our farmers into cooperatives, cluster them into working, production, and marketing cooperatives so that ma-maximize yung impact nila. Otherwise, after 10 years, when they are now free to resell their lands, baka ganun na nangyari. Okay, thank you. Baka may...
Positive? Well, at least he has maintained the growth, for one, inflation, stabilized. Then jobs have been created. Going back to the labor export policy, which I think should be reversed. Well, yung grado kanina ni Sir ay pasang-awa. But you see, in school you have 4 years, right? The president has 6 years. So this is his year 1. So he still have a lot to go. But the first year should have sent very clear and strong signals on his quality and competent leadership. So therefore I agree na pasang-awa. But you see, tawag natin, work in progress. You could not say incomplete or no basis. Meron natin siya nagawa. Okay, thank you.
If I may, I'd like to add to Emmy's comments about the combination of farmers' debt. The farmers' debt is like a fever. Something is happening, and the signs is the failure. But there is a deeper problem that remains to be solved. And it may be a very big problem for our agriculture. I understand these are the bulk of the farmers, the rice farmers. And the inherent problem, fundamental problem about farming must be the one that has to be addressed. The condemnation is only a signal to us to address that deeper problem.
In the area of foreign policy, we can discuss that briefly. Very clearly, the people of the U.S. Policy of Marcos Jr. is several times a step backward. Now, what should we look forward to is the accountability of our other branches in government, particularly the legislative branch, their House Committee or Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs, Oversight Committee, etc. This constitutional function to evaluate and assess presidential policies, including Philippine foreign policy, is something that has been not practiced, not exercised for long. Because it is mandatory on Congress to assess, evaluate, and revisit and review not only the Philippine foreign policy, but also on the various treaties and agreements that have been signed so far since 1951. They have not done that. And I would like to challenge Senator Amy Marcos, who I believe heads the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, to start the ball rolling. But of course, this is something that is quite tricky, considering that Amy Marcos is the sister of the president, so there might be some nuances regarding that. But this is something that should be mandated upon Congress. Trabaho nila na review, assess, and adjust or revise yung Philippine foreign policy. But of course, last year I enabled legislation or recommendation. In the end, it would be the chief architect of Philippine foreign policy, which is the president, that makes the decision.
Sir, one last point na lang. Since you mentioned Congress, the legislature, Senate President Subiri in one of our interviews said that he will join the call, this resolution of Senator Lisa Ontiveros to elevate the continuous incursions of China in the West Philippine Sea to the UN General Assembly. Do you find it necessary for the President to also come up with a specific standard list to at least declare his official stand regarding this continuous China incursions?
Well, the appeal to the UN General Assembly, as distinguished from the Security Council, of course, we'll have to have the approval of the President, because the DFA cannot move without the go signal from the President. Now, right now, I think it's a double-edged measure. Hindi tiyak na mananalo tayo dyan, because of China's new status as a global power, its economic power, no? And these are things we need to carefully consider. But as a general principle, if it is the use of peaceful diplomacy and negotiations, we are all for it. Ang kinatatakutan lang natin, if the approach becomes too extremely embedded in a military framework, no? Kasi pag military yung dominant, to put it very bluntly, it can easily misfire, and if it gets miscalculated, we're facing a war that will devastate everybody. No? Okay.
I believe it is too much asking that every issue on China or any other foreign power for that matter should be settled legally, because we know that particularly in international affairs, the legal approach will not work, and only the diplomatic approach is in practice the one that will work. Let me recall to you that even before Noynoy Aquino raised this, submitted a communication to the arbitral tribunal questioning the line of China, which shocked China in the first place, because both countries were actually talking to each other. There was already a bilateral mechanism, dialogue, that was being used by the two countries before the Aquino government shocked China by raising the issue before the arbitral tribunal. So the bilateral mechanism is, in fact, the UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, encourages parties not only to seek to resolve their conflicts legally, but diplomatically, by the use of this bilateral mechanism that is under also the UNCLOS. I think most of us do not understand that. We forget the fact that bilateral, in fact, China since 1949 has had 23 territorial disputes, and 17 of these were settled bilaterally between China and the other territorial claimants, where China, in fact, bent backward by as much as surrendering 60% of its claims, so long as China and the claimant countries can enter into a non-aggression treaty for at least that. Let us use that. Let us use that rather than go into the legal mechanism, which is quite complex.
Sir, ang bulabay ng DCXL. Sir, napakahalaga budget ang pinag-usapan natin. Sa ibang bansa, sa international news, iniikot ko, BBC, CNN International, Al Jazeera, Arirang, NHC World, pinapanood ko, climate change, heat waves, ang laki ng istorya nila. Yung kay Donald Trump, yung China, awayan ng Ukraine, maliit lang yan. climate change napakalaki. Doon tayo tututok sa climate change. Hindi ko tinatakot ang ating mga kababayan. Binabaha ngayon sa ilang lugar sa bansa. Nagkaroon ng heatwave, 80 degrees. Napakalaki to. Nakakaalarma. Ang tanong, yung budget, pinag-usapan natin budget itong climate change. Natingin natin pangatlo lang. Pero kung akong tatanungin, dapat mas mataas pa sa DepEd. Education, itong climate change, yung punto na ito, para sa akin kung akong tatanungin. Then, between life to, buhay to, hindi natin pagbabaliwanin. Pangalawa, yung contribution natin bilang sa United Nations yan, ang malaking contribution sa emission, ang Europa, ang Pilipinas, ang liit natin eh. Hindi naman tayo, wala tayong mga malalaking kampanya, mga malalaking factory dito. Sa Europa, Amerika, sila yung nakakadagdag. Ang tanong, ito ngayon ang tanong ko sir, yung pondo, when it comes to pondo, napakahalaga dahil budget ang pinag-usapan natin eh. Magkano bang pondo, prioridad ba natin to sa gobyerno? Mukhang nababaliwala eh. Dapat ito yung prioridad, dapat ito yung number one eh. Yung contribution natin, pwede ba natin sabihin sa United Nations yan na dapat konti lang contribution namin dito dahil maliit lang yung ano natin eh. O yun yung question, maliit lang yung ano natin. Kayo mga Europa, kayo Amerika, ang laki ng contribution, kayo ang dapat magbayad. Kami, dapat libre kami. O sir, tanong, dapat libre tayo? Libre. Kasi wala po sa climate change eh. Sige sir, pakitanong ang pakisagot niya.
Thank you. Answer to the question. Yes. Pag-on yung microphone.
Are you asking kung gaano kalaking budget?
Yeah, sir.
For, kanina, may slides ko ba tayo?
Budget, kasi budget ang pinag-usapan natin.
453.1 billion. 453.1.
Is it enough or not? Sapat ba?
Para sa inyo, kayo yung mga eksperto sa yung budget yan, sapat na ba?
Sobra yan sa...
Okay. For how many years lang budget yan?
For the year.
Okay, budget. And then yung pangalawang tanong ko, yung kanina, doon sa contribution natin.
Dalawang tanong niya. Yung contribution ng Pilipinas sa UN climate change.
Hindi ko alam that we contribute. Do you mean we contribute?
Yes, sir. Ate, we contribute doon sa emission kasi kasama tayo doon sa sabi nila. Diba?
Okay. Yeah.
Effect doon sa climate change.
Okay, sige.
Dapat libre natin.
Sige.
Diba, malaking mga factory sila.
Yun ay hindi ko alam.
There's been a call from some of the developing countries to give the developing world less priority in terms of asking them how to meet the zero carbon emission target. And this attention us in South America and the European countries, of course China, because it's the big the factor of the world. So mayroong ganong panawagan. Hindi ko lang alam. Sa United Nations ito, saka sa climate change conference. Hindi ko lang alam kung ano yung status nito.
Brief response. Yung contribution natin sa global emissions, did you know na 0.48% lang of the global emission? In other words, napakaliit yung kino-contribute nating pollution. Tama yung argument mo. Kung ganun pala, dapat managot yung mga bansang primary source. Sila mainly, hindi parang ang inaako kasi natin
for past 100 years.
Tama, I agree with you completely.
For past 100 years.
Yes, but we should, in cooperation with the other victims.
At the problem is my bosses
Yun na nga.
That's the problem.
The way to respond to that, mag-organize yung mga biktima so that we can pressure the main polluters. No? Sila dapat. Yun lang.
Yun sir, kasi napakahalaga to. Kunti lang point for tayo. Tayo yung parang napakalaki. So dapat.
Thank you. Thank you. Ay, may question dito. Sorry. Yes, may question dito. Short lang ang question kasi maraming gusto ko. Okay, sir.
Good day po. I'm Jay Puhoy of Golden Nation Network. I would like to ask po,
Yes.
Any of you can answer this. How do you assess Marcos Jr. trajectory of development where he provides projects for the poor such as food programs and poverty alleviation initiatives? I think na kakala po ito kanina ni Dr. Demario. However, there is a lack of urgency in appointing leaders for various sectors or departments that acts as a backbone of economy such as agriculture. That's the question.
Very nice. Pag-introduce your name ulit.
Quick response. No? Yung mga so-called pro-poor families, policies so far na nakita kasi natin, very stopgap measures, no? Gaya ng Kadiwa, no? Masagana 99, hindi lang stopgap, talagang hindi pwedeng maging institutionally sustainable. No? Now, of course, kung stopgap measure, the next question is, anong gagawin sa mga primary reasons kung bakit patuloy yung problema na yan? Doon ang malaking pagkukulang ni Bongbong Marcos. No? And as you noted, let's start with the Department of Agriculture by appointing a full-time competent secretary, among others. No? And na hindi pa niya nagawa more than a year after assuming office.
Professor Teng. Yes, Professor Teng from Sinhan University.
Question. I'm a scholar of China. I'm a director of Chinese sector, BRICS and global governance sector, and also the secretary of World Financial Forum from China. Thank you. I first should be saying thanks for Mr. Lee. So we invite Lee to attend the so important forum. I have visited the Philippines many days. Beautiful country, beautiful people. I said the Philippines should not be victim of competition among major powers of the world. For a developing country like the Philippines, the world powers, especially China and the United States, should jointly support the development of the Philippines. Should jointly support the development of the Philippines. This kind of engaging in geopolitical disputes in the Philippines. I think the biggest danger in the world is the climate change. And the whole world should work together. And this is being ignored by us. My question, in Philippines, how can we promote better cooperation between China and the Philippines? Please.
How could we promote cooperation Philippines and China on climate change? Yes, on very important climate change. Even the U.S. sent John Kerry to go to Beijing. Yes, for climate change talk.
Okay, in beginning my talk a while ago, I said that I was talking about the Philippine program. I wanted to avoid the topic of climate change, the controversial part of climate change, because the phenomenon of climate change is still very much in debate worldwide. Is it a real problem or an imagined one? That's one of the problems. The second aspect of controversy about it is the response of the world governments. Is it a reasonable response, meaning to change our primary source of energy? Okay. So there are two areas of controversy with regard to the phenomenon of climate change in the world. And that's why I confined my presentation to our program to avoid that. But I was afraid that this question would be asked. So let's see what we can do now. One of the things we often conflate with climate change is environmental blight or degradation. Let me go to that first, although the question is about climate change, because there's been quite a bit of confusion about this. One thing about that has developed in the world over maybe the past century, the age of industrial age, is that environmental degradation is no longer a national issue. It has become a regional issue. So there are many environmental concerns that have to be shared, not only within a country, but among countries in a region. An example, for example, is the industrial pollution of British factories that are wafted by the atmosphere to the low countries of Europe. So one country cannot just have policies for its own. There must be a communion or cooperation between two countries. So I don't know if you're talking about cooperation in terms of regional environmental problems. If there is, we must find a way. What are our regional common concerns? For example, one possible regional concern was that if we continued with our nuclear plant in Bataan years ago, and if our engineers were not as competent as the Chernobyl engineers, and something happened to our nuclear plant, the likelihood of the pollution being wafted to Japan and coastal China was quite high as compared to the likelihood of it's being wafted to our southern provinces. Therefore, the risk of nuclear problems in Bataan was really a regional risk. But we were the only ones who recognized it as such. So if you're talking of that kind of common environmental concerns, I think we need to, right now I don't know any environmental concerns. And going now to climate change proper, which is really, climate is really nothing but the condition of the atmosphere in terms of temperature. That is all climate is. It is not the condition of the lands, of our corals, of our mangroves, but it is the condition of the air. And there are things happening on ground done by people on ground that happen naturally that cause the temperature of the this is a principle. That's why I really wanted to avoid this discussion because it takes a long time.
Thank you very much.
But maybe
thank you. Thank you. Professor Ridada.
I have a quick, concrete suggestion, Professor Feng. I'm sorry, I mispronounced it. One of the major causes of warming, of course, global warming, is the use of carbon fuel, and other gas-emitting energy sources. Now, China, we know, is a leading user and manufacturer of solar energy.
Yes.
So perhaps a concrete proposal and suggestion is we can work together. China can put some investments on renewable energy, which we badly lack. Although we do already have wind power and solar, but these are very minor at the moment. Coal continues to be the source of, I think, easily 70% of pollution. Thank you.
Very good suggestion.
Just one last clarification regarding the issue of agriculture and food security. Professor Rivera, sir, do you think the decision of the president to take the agriculture portfolio, hindi niya pinatapos sa iba? Kasi according to the president, that's why he took the agriculture portfolio in order to solve all the problems on agricultural issues bago siya mag-appoint ng permanent. So do you think the decision of the president is not a plus factor to his administration?
Is it the correct decision, though?
Definitely, it is a negative factor. No, but, you're president. You cannot possibly be focusing on a single issue or a single department like agriculture. To begin with, wala naman siyang expertise or experience in dealing with agricultural problems, right? So we need a competent, dedicated, professional secretary. Yun ang, I think, ang malinaw na lesson diyan. 1 year. Ano yung nagawa? Walang malinaw. Except for the condonation na hindi naman directly related to the most urgent issues. So, yun siguro ang kailangan maayos niya kagad-agad. Ang dami naman nating competent professionals.
Thank you, that's big. And this is Ms. Buhay. Thank you for their questions. And Professor Peng, also thank you for your question about cooperation. There's a question, a last short question and short answer. In relation to the talk about climate change, and you said about nuclear, do you have any opinion about Fukushima now, the issue? Why the Philippine government is not reacting or no statement to the controversial plan of Fukushima nuclear wastewater? What is your opinion? What is your recommendation for that?
Actually, I heard it from Wilson myself this morning. I really didn't know that Japan had such a plan. But, Japan is the most notable victim of releasing toxic materials to the sea. This happened in the 1950s when they released a lot of mercury. And many of their children became, diseases. So they are the foremost victims of releasing toxic materials to the sea. So I'm really surprised that is the plan. And if you want to ask me, I think they should.
Okay, so yun mga kaibigan, ang isinagawang media forum dyan po sa Kamuning Bakery sa Pandesal Forum na pinangunahan po ni Sir Wilson Lee Flores. Ayan, tungkol to doon sa 100 days ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos. Ano nagawa? Ano nangyari? Ayan, pinag-usapan din yung about sa climate change. Actually, yan pong climate change mga katropa ay noon pa yan no? Kaya nga diba, meron tayong mga tinatawag na kanya-kanya sakay ng gobyerno tulad ng Department of Agriculture, Department of Agrarian Reform, Department of Environment and Natural Resources. So isa po ang natural resources sa DENR, dyan po para sa ikagaganda ng ating kalikasan, no? Kasi po yung sinasabi nga nating climate change ay kita nyo kung napapasin nyo, pinagbabawal na yung pagsusunog ng mga gulong ng sasakyan kapag ka dumarating ang halimbawa pagsalubong sa bagong taon. Diba dati makita nyo sa mga karsada dyan may sinusunog ng gulong ng sasakyan. Isa po yan tsaka yung mga paputok pinagbabawal na rin po. Dahil isa po yan na nakakasira po ng ating kalikasan, yung climate change na tinatawag. Kasi nga po ay yung pong binubugan yan, no, yung mga usok na yan, yung mga pulburo na yan, yan po ay umakyat sa himpapawid, no, mahalo doon sa ating mga hangin, doon sa mga ulap. So yun po nakakasama ng pagdudulot na sinasabing yung sa climate change. Delikado po yun sa totoo lang. Pagka ho yan nagpatuloy, talaga namang baka mawala ang Pilipinas sa mapa. Okay, sa mga kaibigan, sa oras na alas 9 po ng gabi Philippine Standard Time, ay winawakasan na po natin ating programa. Kayo na po bahala kung anong inyong opinyon sa panunungkulan ni Pangulong Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. sa kanyang kasandaang 100 days na panunungkulan. 100 days ba? Basta sa kanyang isang term, isang taon. Dahil magkakaroon na naman ng SONA. Okay, so mga kaibigan, with that, maraming salamat po sa lahat na sumaybay sa ating programa Tropa, no? Sina Kuya Gimo, si aking kabatchmate Ramil Chanko, si Maxi de la Cruz, ayun, nanonood din pala, si Maxi, kumpare ko. At siyempre si Kuya Leo Bicaldo, si Miss Jackie Lagpawadahar, at sabi niya, happy birthday daw sa idol, Boss Rosel. Uy. At siyempre si Kuya Ray de la Ria, nagtugatog dyan sa Malamon. Muli po mga kaibigan, ako po yung naging kasama, ka-jamming, kakosa, dito po sa programang Tropa, no? ROCEL LOPEZ. Nagsasabing magandang gabi po sa inyo at mapayapang magdamag. Magandang gabi po.
Ngayon, just to continue, Mr. T.R.O.P.A, the person named in the search warrant was not around during the implementation of the search.
Talakayan. Representative. Opinion. Palawakin. Aksyonan. Kasama si ROCEL dito na sa New Millennial 9 TV.
Barangay, pangunahing unit ng pamahalaan lokal kung saan dito pinag-uusapan ang bawat sigalot ng mga residente ng bawat barangay. Dito rin pinag-uusapan ng mga piling hanggang na opisyal na barangay ang mga proyekto para sa kanilang barangay. Kumustahin natin ang panunungkulan ni Kapitan dito sa Dama Barangay sa Millennial Online TV Worldwide, ang katropa ng bawat barangay.
At tinatapos ang ating pagpupulong. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo at tapos na po ang ating session. Enjoy na po tayo.
Hanap mo ba ay Unwind Ventures? Tara nang mamangha sa mga tanawin. Ano man ang iyong travel goals? Dadalhin namin kayo. Sa Unwind Ventures at saya. Dito lang sa Wow Biyahe. Kaya wow, di ba?
Abangan dito lang sa Millennial Online TV. Ikaw ba'y nag-isa? Nalulungkot? Dahil iniwan at ipinagpalit? Niloko? Nanginamahal? Kung ngayon, i-type sa iyong mga cellphone, Facebook o YouTube man ang Millennial Online TV. Dahil nasa Millennial Online TV na ang online realista ng bagong milenyo, si Randall Villanos.
Sana'y di magmahil ang dati kong araw ng di pang bata sa piling ni nanay. Nais kong mauli ang awit ninang mahal. You are the one who makes me happy
At haharanahin kayo ni Randall ng iba't ibang awitin para maibsan ang inyong inip at kalungkutan kahit nasaan man kayo.
Hanggang sa tumanda. Come on. Matanda na, sana'y di tayo magbago.
At pwede rin kayo makiduwit kay Randall tuwing Huwebes ng hapon. Ano pa hinihintay nyo mga kamilenyo? Tawag na!
Araw-araw ikaw ang gusto kong
Mga milenyo, pagod ka na ba galing sa trabaho? At gutom na sa maghapong pagtatrabaho, pero wala kang pagkain sa bahay? Narito na ang sagot mga katropa, ang super manok lechon, napapawi sa inyong gutom at siguradong mapapa-analyze ka dahil sa tender juicy na jumbo pa at siguradong malinis at bagong katay buhat sa farm, kaya super na sa lasa at pangmasa pa. Ano pa hinihintay nyo mga katropa? Takbo na sa Super Manok Panteño Siniluan at bumili na, baka maabusan ka, katropa. Mga katropa, masarap at dekalidad na merienda ba para sa mga Dabber Cats ang gusto nyo? Kung gayon, narito ang saktong presyo at dekalidad na sarap. Ang Jugnos Master Pizza, ang pizza ng mga original na Dabber Cats. Ika na, a delicious snack on a powerful price. Matatagpuan sa Baler Street, 1550, Makati City. Ano pa hinihintay nyo mga katropa at mga Dabber Cats? Sumod na, punta na, para matikman nyo ang Jugnos Master Pizza. Pinaigting, pinalakas ang bagong news online TV ng bagong milenyo. Millennial Online TV, ang katropa mo sa pagbabalita.
Hi, this is Hilary Gadon. Nananawagan ako sa ating mga katropa, no? At mga kaibigan, mga kababayan, na palaging tumutok sa Millennial Online TV. At yan ay pinangunahan. At yan ay pinangangasiwaan ng aking kaibigan na si ROCEL. At ang mga nanunood dyan ay hindi bobo!
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, pero sa sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa dikit mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagagang putok sa simoy at sa langit ng pagaw, ay hinatang tulad, awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang lang matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagtitindig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang ay di magtitindig. Luman ang araw ng walang pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya ng pagkay mga amin, at mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Sa lahat ng bumubuo ng Millennial Online TV at sa lahat po ng sumusuporta, maraming salamat po. Millennial Online TV is now signing off.